Welcome to an afternoon of inspiration. Time and presence are our greatest gifts. Thank you for sharing those with me today. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Catherine Thomas. I am a speaker, the host of the Compassionate Conversation series, and author of Awakening the Vulnerable Heart and Inspiration from What Is. Today's program will transcend a simple poetry reading. In addition to sharing poetry and photography, I will detail the journey to embracing authenticity, reveal why Inspiration from What Is was dedicated to the people of Cedarburg, discuss the joys and challenges of self-publishing, and provide a pep talk for others considering a similar leap of faith. Inspiration chronicles achieving authenticity by embracing a simple and spiritual life, becoming an empty nester, celebrating a milestone birthday, surviving a global pandemic, and accepting that it was time to release my 30-year relationship triggered a period of contemplation. I reflected on my time spent in the roles of daughter, wife, and mother. I gratefully acknowledge the gifts received from those roles. I acknowledge the challenges faced in those roles. I gave myself compassion for doing my best with what I had. I took responsibility for doing the work needed to heal. I set out to unapologetically move forward with who I am now. I set boundaries that aligned with my newly claimed true self. Relationships that could be reimagined or recreated remained. Those that could not, I released with gratitude and compassion. Means of connection always surround us and come from a place of internal wholeness. When feelings of love and connection are achieved from being in nature, casual acquaintances, friendships, and simply observing what is, the need to view romantic partnerships as the singular source of validation diminishes. Before I came to a place of wholeness and self-possession, my self-talk was harsh and hurtful. I used the reactions and actions of others to validate me and define my worthiness. We must assume responsibility for our own mental, emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual well-being. Doing so allows us to be vulnerable to others, knowing we are our own rock. Coming from a place of wholeness allows external relationships to transition to a source of wonderful enrichment. How my awakening enhanced everyday life. I'm happily living a life of minimalism. I've embraced the abundance of what I have versus feeling the need to acquire more unnecessarily. In my previous life, shopping and errands often served as a means of filling time. In my new life, I delight in thrifting, rocking my library card, and having a single streaming subscription for television. I started treating my senior car mindfully, and I call her senior car because she's my baby. She's 15 years old. Realizing that she was a finite resource, my usage changed, walking wherever possible, chaining errands and outings. I now experience feelings of love and contentment from ordinary encounters with animals, nature, and others. These simple connections recharge me, filling me with optimism and joy. I learned to regulate my nervous system by operating from a place of compassion, curiosity, and acceptance. In my previous life, I judged myself and others. I saw myself as a victim, viewing life as happening to rather than for me. I held on to anger when people did not listen to my needs and failed to show up in the way I needed. I now enjoy a sense of calm and competence by taking responsibility for my thoughts and reactions. I embraced wholeness and enoughness as being an inside job. I became enlightened to the fact that others have their purposes and responsibilities. It's not their job to complete, rescue, or validate me. It's mine. This epiphany allowed me to view others with compassion. It allowed me to view other people in my life as beautiful enrichment. I rejected the notion of becoming coupled as the hallmark of success. I acknowledged that I have the power to control only 3 things: what I think, what I say, and what I do. Focusing on my passion and purpose, learning and serving, allowed me to control my happiness. Validation became internal versus external. Moving through life with a curious and compassionate mind allowed me to see and accept others as they are. Knowing that I was in control of my contentment allowed me to remain in relationships that served me, release ones with gratitude and compassion that did not, and attract new ones that honored my authentic self. For the first time in my life, I developed a strong gratitude and spiritual practice. In my previous life, I used to scoff at giving thanks, fixate on what I didn't have, and hold grudges and anger towards others who failed to read my mind and serve my needs. In my new life, I hold 4 formal spiritual sessions daily. Waking up. Before getting out of bed, I give thanks for the night's rest and recite a simple prayer. Late morning prayers, manifestations, and gratitudes. This session is my primary spiritual time. I name and give thanks for the blessings received, ask for guidance, and speak my intentions into existence. Early evening abundance session. I acknowledge the prolific abundance in my life, attributes, possessions, and people. Because I am challenged by a scarcity mindset, naming aloud all the abundance in my life grounds me in the beauty of the present. During this practice, I sit in awe of the plentiful and seemingly ordinary bounty surrounding me. Pre-bedtime highlight reel of gratitudes. This is my favorite. Before retiring to my bedroom, I end the day by naming daily happenings for which I am thankful. This practice lets me quiet my mind to prepare for a good night's rest. Awakening to inspiration, continuation of the regenerative journey. Awakening the vulnerable heart illustrates transitioning from simply existing to living authentically, moving from closed to open heart. Inspiration highlights the beauty of a mid-life revolution. By embracing a practice of mental stillness, insights appeared as prose, aiding in processing of life events. Utilizing a quiet and curious mind allowed for greater clarity in interpersonal relationships. Adopting a lifestyle of minimalism allowed for appreciation and celebration of just enough being more than enough. Breaking free from past identities, defined by roles played in the lives of others, allowed for reacquaintance and realignment with the true self. Inspiration centers on the power of reconnecting with awe. With a quiet mind firmly rooted in what is, observing simple magic and beauty around us is possible. Nature, beautiful connections during casual encounters, the pure love afforded by animals. Inspiration calls upon viewing matters of the heart in a different way. The most substantial relationships are those entered from a place of wholeness versus showing up in pieces. When we expect others to complete us or be our person, we forget that they too are on a journey to evolve into their highest selves. Inspiration celebrates gaining enoughness through self-possession. Deriving wholeness and validation from within allows us to fearlessly set the standards and boundaries to align with our authentic selves. Affirmative self-coaching trains us to treat ourselves with love and compassion. This action sets the standard for what we will accept from others. Why inspiration is dedicated to the people of Cedarburg. A few years before I filed for divorce, I was inexplicably drawn to downtown Cedarburg at Christmas time. I stood on Washington Avenue watching the lights on the theater sign in complete awe. As I navigated Washington Avenue, taking pictures of the holiday decorations, I felt a tremendous sense of peace and flow. After moving to Cedarburg amid divorce and COVID, serenity and ease continued. My daily walks during that period of internal and external upheaval gave me feelings of connection and belonging. I've made many wonderful neighborhood friends whose stories have touched my life. Hi, Mark. I am in awe when I think about how I now have the privilege of living here. I feel an affinity for Cedarburg unlike anywhere else I have ever lived. I dedicated inspiration to the people of Cedarburg because this magical place is the community of my heart. How the title came to be. The new normal, used in COVID, never resonated with me. I refer to things as what is. To me, the time right before COVID was the end of the way of life previously known. It was impossible to create a new normal from what was. Upon deeper reflection, it resonated with me that functioning from the present wasn't only crucial to moving forward from COVID, but necessary for living a calm and content life. The key to freeing the mind from clinging to what was or fearing what would be was to look up and be immersed in the present. Seeing things as what is employs the lyrics in the song Underdog by Alicia Keys. Here's the chorus that forever changed my worldview. One conversation, a simple moment, the things that change us if we notice when we look up sometimes. Looking up physically from our phones and AirPods. Looking up from our absorption with ourselves. Looking up to see beauty in plain sight. Looking up to see humanity in others. How poems are caught. I never set out with the intention of writing poems. They materialize on their own. They come when I'm in a state of stillness and the thought of something I'm trying to process triggers them. They appear most often during spiritual time or on walks. They manifest quickly and all at once. I capture them on my phone as an email, and rarely do I use a thesaurus to change words. Rereading them brings me calmness and clarity. They are a source of validation and inspiration for boldly navigating what is. During the editing process of inspiration, I caught 0 poems. I set the intention to continue catching poems for inspiration up until a specific date. My creative brain was then set aside for the analytical one. After I released inspiration, I slowly started catching them again. How poems and photos were paired. Photos throughout inspiration were captured unaltered, except for I don't, which we'll see in a few minutes. They were captured out on my walks. During the editing process, I paired them with poems. I never set out to capture a specific image to go with a poem. Images and inspiration showcase the awe and magic of finding beauty in the ordinary by being present in the moment. Introduction of chapters and inspiration. Poetic storytelling and inspiration is told through the chapters and the order of the poems within the chapter. I was very conscious of starting and ending each chapter with impactful poems. The 5 chapters are What Is, Nature is Sensei, Ensemble Cast, Matters of the Awakened Heart, and Self-Possession. What Is? The first 5 poems detail embracing a simple and spiritual life. Poems in this chapter deliver insights, validation, and reassurance caught from a state of quiet mind. Nature is Sensei. These poems deliver hope, calm, and resilience based on observing nature's quiet and steadfast beauty. Nature reminds us of seasons and cycles. Flowers and trees have a time of blooming and a restoration period. So do we. Ensemble Cast. This chapter reflects on the effect others have on us. Soulmates aren't the only people who affect the trajectory of our lives. There are gifts in the most random and straightforward encounters. When we pause to reflect upon and reframe those relationships, we gain insight that aids evolution into our true selves. Matters of the awakened heart. Inspiration sets new standards for romantic relationships by encouraging one to find comfort and contentment in being with oneself. Newly established boundaries outline how I will share my vulnerable heart with others. Self-possession. The final chapter of inspiration expounds upon the epiphany that wholeness comes from within. Abandoning the need to have one's enoughness validated externally allows for complete control over contentment. Being coupled moves from being the marker of success to functioning as beautiful enrichment. Editing inspiration. The process took over 6 months, and I narrowed over 200 poems down to 116. I then placed each poem into one of the 5 chapters. Once placed within the chapters, I then reordered all of the poems to tell a cohesive story within the chapter. I used the order of chapters and the position of poems within them to tell inspiration's story. Moving from the role of a creative to an analytical editor was challenging. I stopped catching poems during this time. My brain needed to shift into analytical mode. It felt uncomfortable at times to be so hypercritical of my work, and I observed a sense of dissociation from it then, which was very unsettling. When I released inspiration into the world, I could see her through my creative mind and enjoy her again. Themes in inspiration. Inspiration has 7 distinct themes: reawakening, reframing what is, thriving in certain uncertainty, embracing aging, reimagining relationships, rewriting the fairy tale, and celebrating self-possession. Reawakening. The first 5 poems in inspiration set the tone. They are key to the story that unfolds throughout the book. Navigating life during divorce and a pandemic brought the epiphany that the current state of certain uncertainty required moving through life intentionally. It needed to be done from the present, or what is. Immersing myself in what is involved recognizing the life I had been living was over. I now dubbed it my previous life. My poems Illumination, Changing Room, Reintroduction, Urban Monk, and Quietude illustrate this theme. Illumination. In unfathomable times, those who can find the light are charged with reigniting the wicks of those who've lost their way. Changing Room. It took stripping away labels of daughter, wife, mother to return to equilibrium and be me. I'd like to call your attention to this image. I caught this on a walk in Cedarburg. Before I moved to Cedarburg, I have never before in my life seen a tree that started out as one kind of tree and evolved into a different kind of tree, ever. And it just utterly fascinated me. If you look around Cedarburg, you find groves of these trees. So I called it the transformation tree when I was out on my walk, and I just felt it fit perfectly with this poem. And if you're into tree eyes, if you look, I don't have a pointer, it's up to imagine here, there's a nice tree eye up there. But again, it's nature reminding us that we evolve. Reintroduction. I accept what I am and that who I was no longer is. I'd like to call your attention to this picture too. It might be a little bit hard to see from where you're sitting, but I looked into the sky one day and I swear this looks like a human head. Eyes, nose, beard. And I thought that was the cool thing. Again, in Cedarburg, just walking around, finding just utterly incredible things. Urban Monk. I live a life of solitude in plain sight. Quietude. Shutting myself off from the world was necessary to discover my true mission within it. Reframing what is. Throughout inspiration, the poems illustrate the importance of love and compassion for oneself and others, seeing and accepting them as they are. Choosing to operate from a place of what is rather than what was allows one to release past traumas. Responding to situations from the present, discarding false narratives, and showing compassion for self and others allows one to move forward with contentment and ease. My poems Sizing Up, Moving On, Enoughness, and Lockdown illustrate this theme. Sizing up. Trying to fit what was into what is akin to trying on the shoes you took your first steps in and being surprised they've been outgrown. Moving on. When the time comes to end its tenancy with a tree, the autumn leaf confidently lets go, drifting dreamily to Mother Earth. Enoughness. An advanced soul is gratified by merely observing beauty. An unseasoned soul suffers unrelenting desire to possess it. Lockdown. When the cage bird discovers the door has always been open, that creates more disquietude than perceived captivity. Thriving in certain uncertainty. These poems help to process global anxiety, taking a respite by shifting focus from events beyond our control to being present in nature provides serenity. The ability of nature's beauty to draw our attention to the micro versus macro state of affairs quells overwhelm. My poems Member of the Flock, Grounded, Diversity, and Enlightenment illustrate this theme. This photo was really special to me when I later paired it with this poem, because if you look at it, it's this group of mushrooms that are just bonded together and have come together in a group. And, singly, they wouldn't have been as impactful, but when they came together as a group. And then when I paired it with this, it just felt right. Member of the flock. Even when you're powerless to intervene in unthinkable chaos, witnessing your cries being mirrored by others somehow softens the devastation. Grounded. It's not preventing exposure to the existence of darkness that makes flowers reach for the light. It's their choice. Diversity. Coral and golden-hued roses thrive side by side on the same bush. When will we recognize the beauty of differences enriching the experience of our humanity? Enlightenment. As the rising sun gradually transitions the western sky through various hues of blue, nature reminds us profound change is often initiated by an imperceptible process. Embracing aging. In addition to navigating divorce and a pandemic, I was also tasked with coming to acceptance that my body was changing in both function and how it was viewed by society. I took comfort in this transition by referring to my physical self as earth body. This reminded me that I am a spiritual being having a human experience. My physical body is the vessel for my ethereal soul. Celebrating the beauty of Earth Body, I express gratitude and awe daily for the gift she gives me. I acknowledge the simplest things, my hands and feet, my sight and hearing, and ability to breathe easily. I celebrate her ability to heal herself. I move forward in my new life with respect and gratitude for Earth Body, but without preoccupation with my physicality. Showing her love and acceptance for the inevitable changes of aging, accepting her impermanence as a vessel of the eternal soul. Caring for her, yet remaining focused on what is truly important, my passion and purpose for learning and serving. My poems True Gift, Flip Switch, Third Act, and Showtime illustrate this theme. True Gift. The wrapping paper becomes abraded in transit, but the contents of the package retain their value. Flip switch. The fertile body prides itself on sustaining others. The elder body delights in nurturing authentic self. Third act. In this stage, like a storied evergreen tree, roots remain tethered to earth, whilst highest self surrenders to sky. Showtime. The curtain will inevitably fall. Focus instead on the quality of the performance. Reimagining relationships. After completing my active parenting years, I revisited and reinvented myself, my sense of self, to reflect who I am. The process of individuation must occur on both sides. Seeing your adult child as their own person that you are no longer responsible for molding. Allowing your adult child to see you as your true self outside of the confines of just mom. Although some relationships brought pain and struggle, they were a key part of my journey towards achieving my true self. The lessons and gifts we take from those relationships stays with us, even when they end. Viewing relationships with others as enrichment. Until we know and are comfortably acting out of a place of true self, we will not surround ourselves with the right people. We become empowered when we embrace the fact that we are in control of bringing wholeness and healing into our lives. We become our own rock and our own person. When we embrace these virtues, we operate from a place of wholeness and attract the right people and the right relationships. Relationships with others are delineated by reason, season, or lifetime. 2/3 of those categories imply impermanence. The only guaranteed permanent relationship we have is with ourselves. Let me say that one again. The only guaranteed permanent relationship we have is with ourselves. Endings are not a sign of failure. In 2/3 of situations, they're natural. We can move forward with gratitude for the lessons and gifts received without anger, sadness, or regret. We are never alone. We are with ourselves. My poems Conservation of Energy, Never-Ending Story, Well Done, and Apple and Tree illustrate this theme. Conservation of energy. Gate valves protect physical resources by controlling output. Adeptly installed boundaries serve to preserve emotional well-being. Never-ending story. During earthly tenure, we live together apart, live apart together. It's only when our celestial souls depart terrestrial confines the purpose of interconnection is revealed. Well done. It takes 2 fully cooked individuals to create a new recipe for interacting. The transformed side of the pancake cannot be flipped and returned to its raw state. I hate to pick favorites in my baby inspiration. You know, we all have our children. This is one of the most important poems to me. I have to say this is probably one of the strongest poems in the book. And I'd love to call your attention to the image. It's, you know, you can see there's interconnected hearts everywhere. And as I read it to you, you'll kind of understand more of the symbolism. But again, I never set out to capture an image to go with a poem. I take the pictures and later match them, and this one just hit. Apple and Tree. Your terrestrial body grew inside mine. Your celestial spirit was already complete. I planted virtues living in strict accordance with them. Your heart served as a sieve, filtering them to match your truth. You needed my body to belong to this earth, but you never belonged to me. Rewriting the fairy tale. Inspiration sets standards for romantic relationships to align with the newly embraced true self. It's important to understand that one's partner is on an identical quest to evolve into their most authentic self. Their purpose is not to serve you. Their purpose is not to complete you. Because they are on their path of transformation, you may be a season, reason, or lifetime to them. Contentment is achieved by assuming responsibility for your wholeness. External relationships are enrichment. My poem, Shifting Gears, Heartbreaker and retitling illustrate this theme. Not enough used to be more than enough until I finally became enough for myself. Heartbreaker, choosing to love fiercely while understanding the inevitability of reasons and seasons is a most valiant act. This picture also captured my interest. I was out for a walk. I just happened to look down, and this looked like a broken heart to me in a puzzle piece, and I'd never seen anything like that before. And again, when I came to the point in editing where it was being matched with a poem, the two of these just sung for each other. Retitling. When you came into the picture, my untethered pieces lay scattered at your feet. Now I am the glue holding the whole together. Celebrating self-possession. Inspiration establishes a new standard of enoughness, self-possession, by renouncing external validation for contentment. When comfort in being with oneself is achieved, external relationships can be scrutinized to determine whether they honor one's true self. Those that don't are released with gratitude and compassion. My poems Savior of Self, Calling the Shot, Breaking Free, and I Don't illustrate this theme. Savior of Self. Looking to others to restore wholeness brings the same despondency as attempting to return airborne dandelion seeds to their stem. Calling the shot. My needs used to go unspoken for fear of losing you. My needs are now freely spoken with confidence in finding me. I'd like to call your attention to that picture. I was out for a walk on Washington Avenue. My head was pulled to the right, and I saw this construction vehicle with this on it. And I thought, you're enough. I thought it was the greatest thing. So whenever I'm out on my walks, I'm always talking to people. I ran across the street and I said to the man operating, and I'm like, have you noticed that? And he really didn't notice it, and then found it kind of annoying because it was graffiti. But if you go beyond the graffiti, what a wonderful message. And again, when it was time to bring this poem and picture together, I worked with different editors at my self-publishing support group, Telltale. And one of my editors said this poem needed a picture. And I pulled this one back up. And again, things just fall into place when they're meant to. And I just love these two together. Breaking free. The temporary haven of the cocoon must be broken, because upon achieving magnificent transformation, the butterfly can no longer be confined by what was. This is the one picture in the book that was not captured on a walk. I'd like to present my high-octane coffee. Anyone who's read my first book and my bio knows that I like high-octane coffee. So this picture serves to immortalize my high-octane coffee. I don't. Do you promise to remain the same mentally, emotionally, and physically forever? Do you promise to live small enough to fit within the life you've outgrown forever? Do you promise to plant your heart in soil devoid of like or love forever? I don't. Prose is the vehicle for pursuing passion and purpose. Not only have my books redefined me as an author, but they also served as a vehicle for my true passion, speaking. Beautiful connections made on my walkabouts inspired me to find more formal ways of connecting with others. I created the Catherine Thomas podcast, the Compassionate Conversation series, and became a speaker. If the past 5 years have taught us anything, it's that time is precious and the time for action is now. Yes, I'm encouraging you to listen to your heart's calling. 5 years ago, I would have never guessed I'd be an author and speaker. Here are the serendipitous series of events that led to my writing career. For over a year, I considered putting my poems into a book. One day, a novelist Facebook friend happened to like one of my posts. I contacted her, and she recommended a few resources. Telltale The amazing self-publishing resource I used for both books popped up on a site that I visited. When taking that leap of faith, do it boldly and authentically. This quote by C.J. Martin motivated me to take the leap of faith and bring about change. It's better to cross the line and suffer the consequences than just stare at that line for the rest of your life. The only certainty in life is that it's uncertain. Do you want to come to the end of your earthly tenure with regret and wondering, what if? The beauty of going through the process of change, not perfection in the product, brings about contentment. Use it as a means of feeding your mind and heart. View it as your way of serving others. Put away fantasies of profit, likes, and external validation. Embrace the fact that most self-published authors will not achieve fame and fortune. The goal is to release your work into the world in a manner that resonates authentically with you. If your work manages to touch one person, that's wonderful. When deciding how to release your work, ask yourself if you would smile 5 years from now when you see it in its current form. Beautiful lessons learned from inspiration. Trusting myself to wear multiple hats. I learned to embrace the duality of being simultaneously creative and analytical. Gaining comfort and trusting the process. The original cover for Inspiration failed over 4 times to be printed correctly without an explanation. The final cover ended up being just what my heart wanted. Without explanation, the printer repeatedly printed the borders incorrectly in both of my books. I had to choose whether to leave it to chance that they would print correctly or eliminate them and lose a design feature that I loved. Moving from borders to no borders in both books turned out to be just what my heart wanted. Inspiration became the vehicle for me to identify as an artist. By accident, not that I believe in accidents, we'll call it that, one of my proofs of my book was printed with premium ink. The difference was striking, and I loved how it made my work look. The higher production cost of using premium ink was daunting. I asked myself the following questions. Catherine, 5 years from now, which version of ink will make you smile when you look at it? Premium. Catherine, do artists apologize for pricing their work at its value? Nope. Catherine, do artists use inferior materials and alter their vision of their projects to lower the price? Nope. I accepted that this choice may deter some people, but I aim to bring inspiration into the world in the form that best represented her. My choice was either to people please or please myself. I chose the latter. When people support me by purchasing inspiration, they encourage my true and authentic self as an artist and an author. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Do you meditate?
I kind of do my own version of meditating. The idea of sitting still and doing breath work is very challenging to me. This is so hard to say. I'm a big walker around Cedarburg. In summer, you're going to see me with a baseball cap. I'm going to be rocking a fanny pack. That's me. But I have not been out for a walk outside since the end of December. And I do walking meditation. I also have met many wonderful neighborhood friends. I would say for meditation, I wouldn't do what is standard. For all of my spiritual times, I use spoken word. I do them out loud. And I find when I'm doing that, I'm able to move into a place of extreme focus and flow. So my whole thought of meditation, if anyone asks my advice, do what works for you. You know, if yoga works for you, that's fine. If sitting in meditation quietly works, fine. But whatever allows you to literally empty your mind and be in a place of peace and flow.
You're one of the wisest women I've ever met.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. Well, that really touches my heart. And as I said, these last 5 years, there's just been so much life change, and I am so blessed. As I said, I came out of this marriage and I consider erstwhile to be a friend. And I look back on those years and I see the gifts. And, I look at current world events and I have a different way of reframing what's going on right now. Would anybody like to hear my thoughts on reframing what's going on right now politically without getting too political? Before the election, we were worrying about flipping states red to blue. What we need to do is move things to a micro level, and we need to flip hearts from closed to open. There are so many people who voted the way they did, and they rationalized it because of economy or other things or lesser of two evils. But if someone is unable to look at humanity and vote for goodness and righteousness, the best thing that we can do on a micro level is show love and compassion for others, to turn hearts. That's what's needed to move forward, is every little person, we turn their heart by saying hello, waving, treating service people as people. That is what is going to bring about change. That is something every single person can do. It's these little tiny things. I call it lighthouse people. I have a fabulous woman that I met at Target. And I met her the first time. She was concerned that I have the most perfect bag of bagged lettuce. And that was wonderful person, Fran. And Fran and I were talking. She's also a spiritual person. I talked to her about my concept of lighthouse people. I believe in these challenging times, there are people who can bring light into the world, and people who can bring light into the world draw one another, and they draw one another to the light. And we all can be a lighthouse person. We all can turn towards the light. And we all can make a difference by simply the simplest acts of compassion. And that is what will bring about change. And that is what will help get us through this period, is realizing that we do have control over something.
I hear your teaching background coming out.
Thank you.
And the inspiration you must have given to your students.
Thank you. Well, one of my wonderful teaching friends, Maggie, is in the audience today. And it was full of joy. It was, when I was a preschool teacher, it wasn't as academic as it is right now, thank goodness. But the thing in my classroom was I was all about emotional and social growth. And I'd have some parents worried about counting, and I'm like, if your child can go into school knowing how to be a nice human, they can actually make sure that Johnny can count. And we need to make sure that your child is poised to learn and a good human. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about. And we all have our little child selves in us. And that's where the compassion and the kindness comes in, this is something we all can do.
We are book publishers. We came up here to learn what you've done and how you do it.
Well, I appreciate you making the trip, and it's wonderful to have a chance to connect. Thank you. Okay, so how I market my book, I'm also on Amazon, and I have the blessing of having a real estate background. I was with Shore West Realtors. Shout out to Shore West. They have the most amazing agent training and marketing department, and a lot of the things I learned from Shore West, I have put into practice for marketing my own projects. I contact businesses, I contact organizations, and in addition to writing books, my passion really is speaking. And I reached out to Unitarian Church North in Mequon. I have the privilege of presenting a sermon to them next month. I am excited. The Mequon Thiensville Sunrise Rotary Club reached out to me. I'll be speaking keynote at their April 4th meeting, which I'm thrilled about. I have the Compassionate Conversation series coming up in May, and you guys get to hear it first. I have the wonderful therapist Jeanette Boss joining me. We're going to do a May mindset makeover. So all of my marketing basically comes from my creating ideas and contacting people, and then as you start getting to be a little bit well-known, people come and contact you.
What was your website again, please?
My website is awakeningtoinspiration.com. And on my website, I have my books, my story, I've got all of my events, and I have an archive talk section so you can hear other talks that I've done. Thank you for your question. Are there any other questions?
Would it be fair to say that maybe awakening is rediscovering our childhood, but looking at it in a more, I don't want to say adult way, but now we can reflect on who we are, because children are authentic.
I really like the question you presented to me. I just want to get clarification. Were you saying that Awakening, my book, relates to that, or the idea of awakening relates to focusing on the nature of children?
Just the general awakening in us. That, you said when everything, we got to be quiet. So when children are, when we take time to be quiet and solitude.
I like your point. To me, it even transcends awakening into revisiting, because that self has always been there. When I was working 5 years in my urban monk existence, it was reintroducing myself to the child self and learning to appreciate the person that she was and to work through things that were challenging. And I think there's so much that's real that lies within children and the child within us. And we always have the ability to tap into that resource. That, our child self is a guru, they're a teacher. They hold our challenges, they hold untapped potential. And, we can always go back. And learn. Thank you, Mark. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Could you just say something about your other book, Awakening the Vulnerable Heart?
Awakening the Vulnerable Heart was my first baby. And she talks about transitioning from simply existing to living authentically. And the book showcases and takes you through the story of moving from a closed to an open heart. The end of the book is very special. The last image happens to be the pendant I'm wearing right now, which says bravery, confidence, and faith. And it shows the transition of coming into acceptance of change, rediscovering true self, and then moving to vows to self of bravery, confidence, and faith. And then inspiration really kind of takes a different avenue towards it. And these poems were more of embracing and accepting a spiritual, simple existence and celebrating the beauty of when one sits in quietness and stillness, the answers come. And another thing I would like to say while I'm standing here is 1.5 years ago, I approached librarian Sarah Kelly with my book. And Sarah embraced me, and she embraced my projects. And if it would not have been for the Cedarburg Public Library, I would have never had my platform. I would not be speaking at Unitarian Church North. The Rotary Club would never have been. And I have so much gratitude for this library, this community. And, I'm grateful that I've had the beautiful poems that I've captured, but without the people who've embraced me, it wouldn't have gotten any further. So I feel it's very important to express that gratitude.
Yeah.
I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to share this afternoon of inspiration with you. I want to thank Adult Services librarian Sarah Kelly and the Cedarburg Public Library for making today's event possible. Infinite gratitude goes to filmmaker Kim Reese for recording today's event. A link to today's talk will be available on my website, awakeningtoinspiration.com. Until we meet again, may you find beauty.
Wow.